Good morning, everybody. It's Chris here with Zone Zero California, and I am north of the ever-famous intersection of Hollywood and Vine. To my right here is the Capitol Records building, but I'm not here for sightseeing. What we are here to do is raise awareness about the very high fire hazard severity zones as is designated by CAL FIRE. Of course, here at Zone Zero California, our job is to raise awareness among homeowners, property managers here in California about the upcoming Zone Zero regulations, what they entail, what they're going to mean for you as a homeowner, property owner, property manager, and what they're going to mean for the community and for the state of California. So what is Zone Zero? Zone Zero refers to the 0 to 5 feet around any structure, home, property, building, and it must be free and clear of any combustible material. So that includes your landscaping, right? It also includes your fences and gates. But with these new regulations coming into focus, it's also going to include things like your roofing and your siding. Again, it's at 0 to 5 feet around any structure or home or building. And so why am I here at Hollywood and Vine? Or just north of it, I should say. Well, this is a good visual representation of just exactly where the very high fire hazard zone where the very, I know it's a mouthful, right? The very high fire hazard severity zone begins. CAL FIRE updated the maps middle of last year after, of course, the devastating fires that ravaged parts of LA like Malibu, Pasadena, Altadena, and Pacific Palisades, not to mention other parts of the state, and up north, Santa Clarita. There's a lot of fires. But of course, most of the damage done here in Southern California was to Altadena, the Palisades, and a good portion of Malibu as well. So, you know, when you're in Hollywood, you're here, you see the big buildings, you don't think fire hazard zone, right? Like when you think fire hazard zone, maybe you say, okay, well, I could understand the hills, right? And if you do look at the map, which is kind of why I'm here, driving around, walking around LA, and making these videos, a good representation is Hollywood Boulevard. Most people are going to be familiar with Hollywood Boulevard, so it's a great landmark as far as identifying where the fire hazard zone begins. And this is the very high fire hazard severity zone, so it would be the areas marked in red. The very edge of that would be marked in yellow, considered a high fire hazard zone, so there's high and very high. But even something like the W Hotel, which is just one block down, is not out of danger. Right? Capitol Records building here in the middle of a high fire hazard severity zone now. So, you know, we're going to take a drive around, kind of just identify, like, I'm not trying to isolate any one particular building or house, but as we drive through the neighborhood, you know, I'll be pointing out all the things that all of these homeowners and property managers will need to start considering when it comes to becoming compliant for these Zone Zero regulations. And it helps also just like really visually bring people in to the conversation to see, okay, how high is the challenge? How big is the challenge? How wide is the requirement here, right? Just how much do I have to consider, right? And it's a big challenge. So, of course, the people in the homes, properties, buildings in these very high fire hazard severity zones are going to be given the most scrutiny at first. And then, of course, by 2028, 2029, it is expected that every single building, property, or structure in California will need to meet these Zone Zero requirements. So, of course, I started a school group here if you guys want to join the conversation. I invite you guys to come. I don't want to talk politics here in these videos and these channels, or at least, you know, give you any kind of opinion of mine on it, but I do know a lot of you have opinions about this. In fact, that's been the biggest pushback in this whole debate, in this whole regulatory process. It's the pushback from homeowners, from property managers, obviously, you know, acknowledging the challenge, right? Not just the costs, but the scope and the enforcement, right? And that doesn't even include the insurance companies who've stepped in as the de facto enforcement of these regulations, right? By denying people coverage, denying people renewals, unless they make these changes, right? So it's a big challenge, probably one of the biggest challenges California is facing right now. So we're going to take you guys, you know, around Hollywood here just to show you into the hills a bit, where the Zone Zero regulations are going to affect people maybe people just like you. Once again, my name's Chris. You can go to zonezerocalifornia.com for more information, resources, or to be put in touch with a contractor in your local area. Of course, we're going to be prioritizing working with contractors who are on the approved list of vendors from CAL FIRE. And yeah, so let's take a walk and drive around and see what we can find. All right, so I don't know if you guys can see it, but there's Capitol Records building. Okay, this is Yucca Street. I'm on Vine. I'm going north up towards the hills. Now, for those of you familiar with the area, you know, Franklin right here. To the right would be Beachwood Canyon. Now, Beachwood Canyon probably deserves its own little video. In fact, let's go that way now. So we're gonna go to Beachwood Canyon. I don't want to leave them out here. So Beachwood Canyon, again, you know, LA is kind of split up into like all these various different neighborhoods, you know. So as you can see, here's a very historic building, Old Hollywood Hotel, right? Hollywood Tower. And again, this is kind of, you know, there's a little overlap here with Los Feliz, but this is Beachwood Canyon we're coming up on. We're gonna take a little drive up there. But again, this is all a very high fire hazard severity zone. So imagine all of this landscaping. Right now, I know zone 0 refers to the 0 to 5 feet around any structure, right? So, you know, maybe on these particular properties, it's not as noticeable or as bad, but I mean, this is all considered very high fire hazard severity zone, right? You've got a hotel right here, right? You've got apartment buildings. All right, so this is Beachwood Canyon. It's a little bit more of a localized community. Let me put my darn seatbelt on so I don't get in trouble. I'm probably really bad at that. You guys can't tell, right? So again, oh, look at this wood fence, right? Goes all the way up to the structure. So, you know, that'll need to get replaced, right? What else we got here? So, you know, a lot of stuff in this area tends to be brick, cement, wrought iron style. You know, you can see here. Let me just kind of pull over. I don't want to slow up anybody behind me. You got a wrought iron gate and fence. That's fine. But what about all this landscaping that's right up next to the building? Right, that's going to be within zone 0. How about across the street here? You know, again, you've got these giant palm trees. Those palm trees are touching the building, right? Like that's zone 0 for sure. You know, so that's just like to give you guys an idea of like the scope of the challenge here, right? So like there, you got this giant privacy hedge. I guarantee that goes all the way up to the side of the house, right? And it's got a wood fence underneath it, right? So, you know, again, look at all this landscaping. Look at these palm trees, right? All these iconic palm trees. And people rely on this stuff for shade, you know? Again, look at all, you got all that right there next to that building. You got all this right here next to this building. Let me just pull over again. I got some cars behind me. Right, here you go. Here's another wood fence right here. Right? Now, does it get close enough to the structure? I don't know, but what about the landscaping, you know? Now, a lot of the buildings here, siding for a second, looks like it's got a lot of stucco siding, right? A lot of stucco, that's good. Okay, but what about the roofing material, right? Because what do we know? We know the dangers are in the ember storms, right? Oh, look at that giant old wood gate, right? You got more wood gate right there, wood fence, right? Look at that little equipment enclosure right there. That's wood. That's going to need to be replaced, right? Iconic house, very nice, right? I'm on Beachwood Canyon Drive, I believe. This is, again, you know, its own little private enclave, and I don't know if you can see the Hollywood sign here up on the hill. I mean, you can see this is like beautiful, iconic place to live, right? Look at this giant privacy hedge. That's going to probably need to all be replaced, right? All the stuff next to that home. More privacy hedge here. More privacy hedge here. You know? We'll just drive for a little bit up more here, Beachwood Canyon. Right, how about this? This wood fence over here. Okay, maybe it's not exactly in zone 0, but it goes all the way up between the properties. And that neighbor's fence touched. The neighbor has a gate, a wood gate that needs to be replaced, right? So again, I don't know if you guys can see the Hollywood sign up there right in front. The curvature of the camera might not really give you any idea of how big it is, but you know, this is why this is sort of a iconic neighborhood. So, you know, I don't want to go too much, guys. So I'm gonna turn around. We'll hit the Hollywood Hills next. But you can see Beachwood Canyon, Hollywood Hills, all very high fire hazard severity zone. So, you know, it's a giant concern. Giant concern. Okay, I'm gonna cut it now and we'll pick it back up in Hollywood.